Anna and Brian tried to keep their affair a secret, but they were reportedly spotted early one morning leaving an elegant Manhattan apartment building, Anna draped in a chinchilla coat meant for evening wear. The sighting reached the media, and in 1999 the scandal broke. At home, David Schaefer learned of the affair when he found a message Brian had left for Anna on their answering machine. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Denise. Today's episode is going to be an audio-only episode, just to let you know. We have 3 chapters we're reading today, so it's going to be a longish episode. The 3 chapters we have are entitled The Party's Over, An Affair to Remember, and then finally, A New Life. We've got about 50 pages to get through, so let's go ahead and jump in. From ejecting veteran staffers to igniting in-house competition for stories to establish dress codes and odd rules of behavior, Anna turned Vogue into her vision of what a great fashion magazine should be. Some longtime staffers fled in terror or disgust at the changes or their treatment, like Grace Coddington had done in London before she came back into the fold. Others left because their departments were abandoned or they were axed or they retired. Anna had a very interesting way of establishing herself, recalls Elizabeth Treader, who was a 17-year-old veteran of Vogue, a honcho in the fabric department, which Anna dismantled to streamline the operation. She took a look at the staff, as it was, and scheduled lunches with the ones she wanted to keep, and if you didn't have lunch with her, you knew what was up. Luckily, Treader got an invitation, and Anna took her to Treader's favorite restaurant, the Oyster Bar at Grand Central Station. They had a pleasant chat, but soon Treader was gone. Age, she says, could have been a factor. She was a decade older than Anna, and Anna's mandate was young, spirited, enthusiastic. Hip-hop editors like Gabe Doppelt came in. I was not hip-hop. Treader's department was closed, and she was assigned to the tedious job of shooting pattern pages, something everyone abhorred. Treader had mentioned to a younger friend all of Anna's talk about wanting everything youthful, and the friend thought, this is actionable, and suggested that an age discrimination suit might be in order, a repeat of what had happened at HG. But that's as far as it went, she says. So was I pushed out? Possibly, by the trend of things, the way it was going. Over the years at Vogue, Treader had made many contacts in the fabric business, so when things started to look very bleak, she had opportunities out of Vogue. I said to my husband, I think the party's over. I went to speak with Anna, and I said I thought I had to go someplace else. She didn't say, no, you can't leave. Another older longtime editor who left 6 months into Anna's reign but stayed within Condé Nast also thought age figured in Anna's personal decisions. There was that whole thing about young, she asserts. Anna was kind of peeling out everyone who was older. Anna was just adamant that everyone be young. And the thing is, she inherited Polly Mellon, who one wouldn't call young, but Polly transcended the age issue because she was such character and tried so hard. Mellon, who had been at Vogue almost 3 decades, had been Anna's biggest cheerleader during Grace Marabella's reign, and was the one who set up that ill-fated meeting in which Anna told Marabella she wanted her job. Anna was aware of Mellon's support, and Mellon was the first one who she told that Grace Coddington was coming on board. I got a phone call from Anna saying, I want you to be the first to know. She told me Grace was going to be creative director, and she said, do you like her? Do you get along? And I told her, I love her. Coddington and Mellon were supposed to work closely, but after a time, less and less of Mellon's sittings and ideas were getting into the magazine, and finally none were. It was sad in a way, recalls a colleague. Polly was sitting there with her thumb up her you-know-what. Nothing of her work was getting into the book. Anna and Grace were sending her a message. Mellon said she was aware that Anna's mission was to have everyone young and beautiful, but Mellon believed that performance was still number one. She also reached the cold realization that 2 strong editors like her and Coddington working together does not work. Mellon held out as long as she could, hoping things would get better, but she finally saw the writing on the wall. I began to feel like I'm not really doing shoots. Maybe I'm not really young enough for Anna. The time comes when you can sense it, and I'm pretty good at that. I had to do some real soul searching and say, come on, you've had a wonderful life. You're the spoiled brat of the fashion world. Anna had decided she'd given Mellon enough rope, and it was now time delicately to drop the trapdoor. Cy Newhouse handled the job for her. He called Mellon to his office and asked her what her dream job was. I said, if you can believe it, at my extreme age, I'd like my own magazine. He didn't have that to offer, but he told Mellon that Linda Wells at Allure needed a creative director, post Lori Shetker. Unlike many of the others who fell by the wayside, Mellon made the move and carved a niche for herself there. And she gives all the credit to Anna, who she says had guts, passion, daring, caring, a point of view, and a number one total focus. She's the biggest influence in fashion in the world in the 20th century. I put her right up there with Coco Chanel. People will argue with me, but I'm a fan. And I really did understand Polly's obsession with Anna. It always felt sort of like, and I mean, this could be a completely inaccurate statement, but have you ever seen before, sometimes you'll see like an older person and they'll spy a younger person and they're sort of obsessed with their youth and passion and their abilities. And it's almost like the reverse of when you're young and you look up to someone and you think, oh, they're so cool. But have you ever seen like an older person kind of like get obsessed with a younger person because, I don't know, maybe being around them makes them feel younger? And it always felt to me like Polly Mellon was attracted to Anna, not in a sexual way or anything like that, but like attracted to her vibe. And even though she could see that Anna was being really hateful to people she cared about, she somehow was always still rooting for Anna. And I don't really understand what the disconnect was with the reality for Polly. Even when Anna was hurting Polly's friends, Polly still acted like Anna was just the most incredible person, the most influential fashionista. And, I'm just like, there were people with better eyes out there, people with better sensibilities out there, but who weren't as mean and vicious. I really truly believe Anna made her way in the world because she scared people into agreeing with her. But that doesn't really mean you have a superior eye. It just means you're a bitch and people are scared of you. But I'll never understand why Polly was so hung up on Anna. To continue the story, the book says that under Anna, everything changed. When Marabella ran the show, there were endless, lengthy meetings, recalls one editor who was close to Marabella and disliked Anna. I remember sitting in a Grace run-through and I was like, oh my God, tell us what you want for heaven's sake. It's not brain surgery. And then with Anna, you were going, this is too damn easy. Because the meetings were over in a flash. It was one extreme to another. With Anna, there was no waiting. She was always prompt. In the past, you sometimes hung around forever. Michael Roberts, a longtime British friend of Anna's, who became the New Yorker's fashion editor in the mid-90s under Tina Brown, had observed Anna closely over the years and came to the conclusion that she simply likes to keep things brusque, abbreviated and to the point. Anna's imperious manner manifested itself even in the elevators and hallways of Vogue. Toby Young, a British journalist who became a contributing editor to Vanity Fair in the mid-90s, claimed that there was an unwritten rule that Anna didn't permit anyone to ride on the elevators with her, and that staffers were expected to let her go first and take the next one. He recalled how a jokester who worked as a researcher at Vanity Fair had talked about hiding behind a pillar in the lobby, waiting with a bunch of friends for Anna to appear, and when she got to the elevator would pile in with her. His stunt would be carried out after having consumed lots of beans and beer the night before. There was even a rule imposed about how Anna was to be addressed and when and where one might speak to her. The teenage daughter of a Vogue department head had gotten a job as a summer intern and was warned by her mother never ever to speak to Miss Wintour. One day the girl was walking down the corridor when she saw Anna heading her way. Frightened of a confrontation with the boss woman, according to Young's account, she walked quickly and looked straight ahead, hoping they would pass safely like two ships in the night. But, just as they got virtually face to face, one of Anna's high heels broke, and she fell to the floor, sprawling at the girl's feet. Remembering what her mother had told her, she gingerly stepped over Anna's prostrate form and hurried to her mother's office, where the child was told she'd, quote, done the right thing. As Young saw Anna, here at last was Patsy from Absolutely Fabulous in the flesh. Under Marabella, everything was a team effort. Decisions were made by committee, long and drawn out. People who came up with an idea were assigned that idea. All that changed drastically under Anna. Everyone was sort of an Indian, outdoing their own stories with a smallish story pot to pick from, says one editor who quit in less than a year, refusing to contend with Anna's demands and warp-speed drive. There would be a list of designers, and each one of the editors would want, of course, the same thing, she recounts. So you'd be crying, me, please, please, please. It was funny and pathetic. We were like children. People were fighting. You'd bring in an accessory to use and hide it in a closet from everyone else. You had to start wearing body armor because everyone was fighting for their piece of the turf. Anna really allowed powerful personalities in there to do their thing. It was like the end of the dinosaur era. sounds incomprehensibly horrible. Anna brought in new writers. Some lasted and some didn't. One in the latter category was the magazine writer and novelist Julie Baumgold, Ed Costner's wife, who had played an unsuccessful role in trying to keep Anna at New York when she was being wooed by Alex Lieberman. Anna viewed Baumgold as someone who could handle the kinds of celebrity stories she was now jamming into the magazine. Some worthy, some puzzling, like the makeover layouts featuring tabloid faces such as Lisa Marie Presley and Ivana Trump. In the late 90s, Baumgold's first assignment was a profile of Brad Pitt. I never met Brad Pitt, and I wrote a quick piece on Brad Pitt because they had some wonderful Brad Pitt pictures. And nobody changed a word, says Baumgold. It was sort of male beauty, and I mentioned that Marilyn Monroe and Elvis had their noses fixed and that Brad Pitt had a little scar on his cheek. That kind of piece was Anna's speed. She was thrilled and invited Baumgold to lunch. She asked me to become a contributing editor and remembered that experience of writing about Brad Pitt. I said yes. That was the last good experience Baumgold had working for Anna at Vogue. She says her dealings with the editor-in-chief after that were never direct. It always came filtered through other people, which was a mistake. It was always, "This is what Anna wants." And that wasn't the best way to have things filtered. It wasn't direct, and then I never quite got it because it changed all the time. On a piece Baumgold did on Femme Fatales, she was told, "Anna wants you to include Kate Beckinsale. Anna wants this. Anna wants that." Eventually, after several more pieces, it all became too much for Baumgold to deal with. "I worked for Anna for 6 months, and I couldn't stand it, and quit," she says, laughing at the memory. "I can say that was the last time I enjoyed working in journalism. I left. That was it for me." This was a weak point in my magazine career. Well, Baumgold made the cut with Anna, but couldn't make dealing with her indirect demands. Others felt that the corporate culture and journalistic direction of the magazine wasn't a perfect fit and fled. Such was the case with highly respected fashion reporter Robin Givhan, who wrote for the lively style section of the Washington Post. Anna, who knew Givhan and had been interviewed by her for fashion stories over the years, approached her to become an associate editor, a job that had just opened up. Givhan was very flattered and thought, if I'm ever going to write full-time on fashion for a magazine, it's not going to get better than Vogue. Givhan had always been impressed with Anna, especially by her incredible decisiveness. She notes, "I would interview her, and there's never any hesitancy. Always a really clear opinion, thought out, always supported. I talked to her about putting someone like Hillary Clinton or Oprah on the cover. She always had a vision about why those covers mattered, saw how those decisions would have a ripple effect within popular culture. She can talk about that in a way that moves beyond just talking about clothes." Anna pursued Givhan, who agreed to join the team. Anna's very good at getting what she wants, Givhan notes. She can be very charming. But within a matter of a few months, Givhan began to have doubts about the job and began questioning whether Anna was the boss she wanted to work for in Vogue the Place. One reason had to do with the magazine's objectivity, or lack thereof. Givhan quickly discovered that the focus of any article she wrote or considered had to be changed to accommodate the Vogue point of view. A newspaper like The Post, as Givhan well knew, chose people to be interviewed based on diversity, whereas at Vogue, the rule of thumb was much narrower. You're looking for women who have a sophisticated point of view, not a suburban soccer mom, but maybe a suburban charity worker. You're always thinking about what these women look like. They're going to be photographed, so they need to project a Vogue sensibility. In many ways, Givhan felt writing for Vogue was preaching to the choir, people interested in fashion, not women with an estranged relationship with fashion. One story that intrigued Givhan, and that she proposed to Anna, never saw the light of day. It was about a designer who had a terrible reputation in the fashion industry, was disliked and self-destructive, but continued to excel and draw public praise. I thought it would make an interesting piece and give an insight to the goings-on behind the scenes, but Anna didn't buy it. The point of Vogue is not to tear down the industry, but to celebrate it, emphasizes Givhan. This story wasn't celebratory. Vogue takes the creativity of fashion seriously. It takes its readers' love of clothes seriously. A woman who just adores shoes is very easily mocked, but the magazine doesn't do that. They say, you know what? You love shoes, we love shoes, and there's nothing wrong with loving shoes. After 4 months, it had all become too much for Givhan. But when she mentioned to friends she was thinking of packing it in, she was advised, honey, buck up. There are people out there who would mow down a crowd for your job. After 6 months, Givhan turned in her resignation, left on what she felt was good terms with Anna, and returned to her fashion beat at the Post. Anna had developed close ties with the Washington Post. She was friends with Katharine Graham, the owner, as was Anna's father. And Anna had become pals with Nina Hyde, the longtime fashion editor, who died from breast cancer, a cause Anna felt strongly about. So she tended sometimes to focus, when she was hiring editors and writers, on Post people. Another was Stephanie Mansfield, who earned a reputation for her bitchy stories and profiles of politicians and celebrities in the Post style section, and was brought on as a contract writer by Anna. Their relationship didn't last long either. One of her assignments was a profile of the designer Donna Karan that was considered tough on her by Vogue standards. Not negative, but realistic, dealing with her personal relationship, among other things. Maybe Anna had not read the story before it went out, says Nancy McKeon, who had worked with Anna at the New York Magazine and a Washington Post colleague of Mansfield. Anna took Stephanie out to lunch, and she was trying to kind of tell Stephanie, we have to be careful about these people. And Stephanie's remark to me was, I don't know what those girls think they're doing up there, but it sure isn't journalism. Then there were those who were so desperate to work for Vogue and were so fearful of Anna that they found themselves fibbing to her in order to be accepted for a job. One such example of fabrication for Anna's sake involves the blonde, leggy, men-on-the-brain writer Candace Bushnell, who described the editor-in-chief as, quote, one of the most frightening women in the world. I don't care what anybody says. Anna had offered Bushnell a job, and the two went to lunch to seal the deal when the white lie slipped out. She's eating a steak that's like bloody, like it was just killed in the street and brought in. And I'm trying to eat a lamb chop. I'm like shaking, recalled Bushnell. She's like, well, Candace, you are exactly our demographic. You live in the urban area and you're 32. I was like, okay, I'm 32. I was actually 36, but I was so frightened of her that I didn't want to say that I was 36 because I was convinced I'd get fired before I even started to write the column. So then I started dating the publisher. Then I couldn't tell him how old I really was because I'd already lied to Anna, and he and Anna talk all the time, so it would have come out. Bushnell, who as a columnist for the New York Observer created what became HBO's blockbuster Sex and the City, called her Anna experience one of those horrendous situations you never ever think you'll get in. A friend of hers tipped gossip columns, and her real age eventually surfaced. Anna also killed stories if the subject wasn't attractive, thin, and beautiful. She's monstrous looking. Have you seen her? An editor recalls Anna saying of a well-known star. Similarly, Anna is said to have killed an essay by a hugely successful author after she saw his photo that was to run with the piece and ruled he wasn't good-looking enough to grace her pages. The editor of the piece is said to have argued, but to no avail with Anna, that it was all about the writer's words, not his looks. Anna, she's not a writer herself, so she has no respect for the people who are writers. All she has ever been known to do is to make something look the way she wants it to look. And if somebody's physical appearance can't be changed, then she doesn't want anything to do with it. She doesn't care if it was a good story. I mean, I can't remember if we've already read it or if we're going to read it, but she didn't always read the pieces that went out. So there were often situations in which it would be clear that she hadn't weighed in properly. And that she didn't really know what was in her magazine. So it's all about the looks for her. It's not about the words. But what an ignorant thing. What an absolutely, unbelievably, incomprehensibly ignorant thing. That you would axe someone because you didn't think he was handsome enough, but the actual story was amazing. What a fool. Anna could be arrogant to major figures in the fashion world, such as the red carpet diva Cindy Crawford. Crawford, scheduled for the important September cover, was forced to attend 3 separate shooting sessions because Anna wasn't satisfied with her look. In the end, Anna killed the Crawford cover. When the model's people complained, they were told, Cindy Crawford's just another model, and I'm Anna Wintour. Under Anna, more celebrities and fewer known models made the cover. In 1998, for instance, Anna put on Vogue's cover the likes of Liz Hurley, Sandra Bullock, Claire Danes, the Spice Girls, Renee Zellweger, whose fashion look Anna would control into the year 2004. Oprah Winfrey. Anna demanded her to lose major poundage before appearing on the cover, and the queen of daytime TV obliged. And Hillary Clinton. As The Guardian in London pointed out, supermodel Carolyn Murphy, the August cover girl, actually seemed out of place in their company. Anna would continue the trend, and by the time of the new millennium, most Vogue covers were graced by celebrities. As a new managing editor, Anna had hired Laurie Jones, one of her great supporters at New York Magazine, who had been at the weekly for 2 decades. It was Jones who had been so knocked out by Anna's portfolio that she brought her to the attention of Ed Costner, the editor, who hired her on the spot and gave her the visibility that caught Alex Lieberman's eye at Vogue. And it was Jones who, hoping to convince Anna to stay, told her, "You can't leave New York. You're the only one doing fashion. If you go to Vogue, you'll be lost." I knew it would be impossible to replace her. Now Jones was working for Anna and was still Anna's trusted lieutenant in 2004, a dozen years later. Joan started at Vogue the day after the 1992 presidential election and remembers how enthused Anna was to see Bill and Hillary Clinton replace George Bush. Anna had been at various parties, Jones recalls, and she was very excited he'd won. Anna was smitten with Clinton's charisma and sexiness, and could perceive the bad boy in him that was always so attractive to her in men. Having gone through the Jennifer Flowers scandal and survived to get elected, Bill and Hillary were celebrities, along with being shrewd politicians, Anna felt. Anna told me the Clintons were the new Kennedys and the royal family wrapped into one, a Vogue editor at the time observes. As the Monica Lewinsky scandal unfolded, the First Lady was troubled about her look. She was never a fashionista. As a Beltway wonk, she favored navy blue pantsuits and low heels to hide her heavy legs. Her hair was a disaster, and she had those fearsome eyebrows. The president's spouse realized that she required a mega makeover. She started meeting with a celebrity hairstylist, and she conferred with haute couture king Oscar de la Renta, who placed her in Anna's able hands. The two struck up a friendship. Under Anna's tutelage, and Anna had an agenda going in, Hillary's wardrobe became more fashionable, even glamorous. She began wearing neutral-colored suits with long jackets that hid her wide hips, her hair became blonder and straighter, and she began wearing softer matte makeup. Anna scoffed at the look of some of the other female players in the Clinton drama, such as Lewinsky and Linda Tripp. "If you're going to make accusations about the president," she intoned, "you'd better have a good hairdresser." Anna's savvy bonding with the First Lady and future New York Senator resulted in a huge scoop for Vogue. During the politically charged Ken Starr versus Bill Clinton year of 1998, Anna put a glamorous new Hillary Clinton on the cover of the December issue, the first time a First Lady had ever struck a pose there. There she was, the stand-by-your-man wife of the embattled president, looking poised and self-assured in a velvet dress and beautifully coiffed. Hillary Clinton's sitting ignited worldwide press so immense that the publicity department at Vogue sent the thick set of tear sheets out in a binder book. The issue sold more than 1 million copies on newsstands alone. The press hit way before the issue was out, Anna told the New York Times. People have seen it as a vindication for Hillary Clinton that being on the cover of Vogue is beyond power in politics. It proves in a way that she's a woman of stature and an icon of American women. Anna was extremely proud of her friendship with one of the most fascinating first ladies of the land since Jackie. So proud, in fact, that after one of her visits to the Clinton White House, she returned to New York with a stack of souvenir White House stationery. During a subsequent visit to London, she gave some of the letterheads and envelopes to her brother Patrick, a political reporter at The Guardian in London, who found her idolization of the First Family rather amusing. Patrick makes fun of Anna, says cousin Patty Gilkison Agnew. He wrote me a letter on the White House stationery and said, "This is from Anna and Anna's love of Hillary Clinton." He said Anna brought the stationery over and left it, so don't think I'm writing you from the White House. At Allure, Linda Wells jumped into the Clinton competition with an issue featuring a makeover given another of the Commander-in-Chief's women, the Minnie Mouse-like big-haired Paula Jones. Tina Brown, not to be outdone, put "that woman, Miss Lewinsky" on the cover of Vanity Fair. And a year later, Brown had Hillary Clinton discussing her husband's infidelities in the premiere issue of her big magazine, Talk. But it was Anna who first saw star quality in the Clintons and scooped her Condé Nast competition. Laurie Jones paints Anna as a superwoman of sorts. "She's very stoic, very strong," she declares. "She's fearless. Everything is done very quickly. There's a lot of meetings, but nothing goes for any length of time." Anna handles it all very efficiently. She approves all the story ideas. She does the run-through where all the clothes are brought in on the rack. When the pictures come in, she picks the pictures. Anna's schedule was rigorous. Up at 6 a.m., she usually played a mean game of tennis before having her hair and face done professionally. In the office around 8 a.m., she had rounds of meetings and made dozens of quick editorial decisions before going out for a high-protein lunch of a lamb chop or a hamburger, with hopes that she didn't run into the animal rights activists who have constantly gone after her, once even throwing a dead raccoon in her plate, which Anna nonchalantly pushed aside and continued, seemingly unfazed with her chopped steak. She usually left her office around 6, and her evenings were as filled as her days. There were charity events that she had to attend. Anna had graciously given her time as a power in the fashion world to the AIDS awareness and breast cancer, and there were parties where she had to make an appearance. At glittery events, she went from ice queen to glamour queen at the sight of the cameras aimed at her, preening and posing and smiling. There are literally thousands of photos of her doing it for the lenses and modeling every kind of expensive outfit imaginable, many of them freebies from friendly designers. Every night during an issue closing cycle, she had to go through and approve stories and photos in the book, a sacred thick-bound volume that is delivered to her home by an assistant. The layouts are in the order of their appearance in the magazine. The book, considered Anna's Bible, is returned to the art department the next morning. Anna has gone over every layout, every page, and after she's reviewed it, the pages are filled with her post-it notes, says Jones. There could be a collage of different photographs, and something the size of a postage stamp, and Anna may say she doesn't like that dress, that whoever's wearing it wore it to such and such a party on such and such a date. Her attention to detail is phenomenal to me. Jones emphasizes that Anna takes home manuscripts every night and reads everything that comes into the magazine. Well, almost everything. In 1997, after a decade of research, author Patricia Bosworth's biography of her father, Bartley Crumb, was published. Bosworth had written about her father's colorful career as a high-powered lawyer, his work as an activist to Harry Truman, his crusade against the Hollywood blacklist, and his suicide in 1959 at the age of 59. Acclaimed for her biographies of the dark lives of Montgomery Clift and Diane Arbus, Anything Your Little Heart Desires also was well received and got a full-page review by Mary Cantwell in the book section of Vogue's April 1997 issue. Vogue reviewed my book wonderfully, which of course was enormously helpful, says Bosworth. Bosworth's book wasn't a bestseller, but the author did win a Survivor of the Year award from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, a group in which David Schaefer was involved because of his expertise in the area of teen suicides. The organization's annual awards dinner was held at a New York hotel several months after the review appeared. Judy Collins sang to me, and it was all very emotional, says Bosworth, who was seated at a table with Anna and her husband, and couldn't help but notice that they had no interaction and didn't talk to one another. Because Vogue had given me a huge spread, I leaned over and I naturally thanked Anna, but she had no idea what I was talking about. To my surprise, she told me she hadn't read my book and didn't even know the review was in her magazine, says Bosworth. I just assumed she'd read it, but she didn't know anything about it, and I was surprised since she's the editor-in-chief. I was struck by that, and I'm not an egomaniac. A couple of months after the event, Bosworth ran into Richard David Story, the features editor at Vogue, who had overseen the review of her book, and told him what had transpired. I just said, I can't believe this. My God, she didn't read it. It was then that I found out that wasn't an isolated incident. He told me, oh no, it's par for the course. She never reads, or very rarely reads the copy for the books and the movies, the art coverage. I found that absolutely staggering. I mean, it is sort of shocking that she could notice something like somebody wearing a dress that she'd already seen in a postage stamp sized picture and a collage of other photographs and make a big note about it, and that page would have to be changed. But that she wouldn't even recall a book review that had been done in the book, even if she hadn't read the whole thing. If you have this sort of memory where you can remember everybody's little outfits from every little thing, and you would axe a whole page because there happened to be a tiny little picture of somebody wearing a dress that you'd already seen, but you can't recall that there was this book review in your magazine, it is surprising. I mean, as editor-in-chief, you would think that she would read everything, whether she found it interesting or not, just because she needs to know what's going into the book. But I also think it's incredibly rude that she would tell somebody, if they say thank you for reviewing my book and you hadn't recalled that it had been reviewed, wouldn't your response be, I'm so glad that you liked the coverage, even if you had no recollection of it. But to say to the person, oh, wait, what book? Oh, did we review that? Yeah, I have no idea what that's about. I mean, it just doesn't make you look good as the editor-in-chief, but also how rude. Just acknowledge it for their sake. They wrote a book, be kind to them. There's no reason to make an awkward exchange if you don't have to. But that never seems to have troubled Anna. Awkward, cringe conversations, it's almost like her lifeblood. It feels like she gets off on making people feel like they are on bad footing. All right, let's continue. Along with all her editorial duties, Anna gave Laurie Jones the responsibility of interviewing potential assistants. Few were ever as hardworking, dutiful, and ambitious as Laurie Shetker and Gabe Doppold, so Anna went through a number of them. But some were well liked by Anna. She takes good care of her assistants, emphasizes Jones with pride, and is very devoted to them. One moved on to be the assistant to the sittings editor, but one especially turned out to be big trouble for Anna. She was a tall, cute, preppy blonde just out of college who wanted to be a writer, a perfect Vogue specimen, or so she seemed. Her name was Lauren Weisberger. I was the one who hired Lauren, acknowledges Jones. It was a gutsy admission for Jones to make, because Weisberger's name, if whispered and overheard by Anna in the hallowed halls of Vogue, could lead to a career beheading. Weisberger spent less than a year as Anna's assistant. After she left, she wrote a book called The Devil Wears Prada, about life as an assistant to the barely fictional Miranda Priestly, described as the most revered and hated woman in fashion, the editor-in-chief of a fashion magazine called Runway. Even though Weisberger repeatedly denied it, everyone in that rarefied world of fashion knew that Miranda and Anna were one and the same. Only the names were changed to protect the guilty and the author from possible legal action. The book, part of a genre called chick lit, written and read by young women, became a bestseller in 2003 and followed in the wake of The Nanny Diaries, a fictionalized tell-all written by two former short-time nannies who worked for the rich East Side Manhattan mothers. Both were the precursor to the 2004 bestseller about a beautiful Manhattan manhunters called Bergdorf Blondes, penned by a former Vogue writer and British pal of Anna's. The books appeal to the same demographic of 20 and 30-somethings who watched Melrose Place, Friends, and Sex and the City, and fantasized about having glamorous lives and studly lovers. Publishers Weekly, the publishing industry trade magazine, gave The Devil Wears Prada a rave review. As the lowest paid but most highly perked assistant in the free world, Andrea Sachs, the protagonist, soon learns her 9 West loafers won't cut it. Everyone wears Jimmy Choos or Manolos. And that the 4 years she spent memorizing poems and examining prose will not help her in her new role of finding, fetching, and faxing whatever the diabolical Miranda wants, immediately. Weisberger has penned a comic novel that manages to rise to the upper echelons of the chick lit genre. In London, the Daily Telegraph dubbed the genre boss betrayal and noted that Miranda Priestly is a stick-thin British steak-eating, tennis-playing, fur and Prada-wearing editrix with 2 children who resembles Wintour in every observable way except that she invariably sports a white Hermes scarf, while Wintour is known for her sunglasses. The article pointed out that in the interest of avoiding a lawsuit, no doubt, Weisberger gives the real Anna Wintour a walk-on part. Many of the reviews and articles about the bitchy novel actually turned sympathetic toward Anna. Some journalists felt the book was unfair. As a Telegraph article points out, and it seemed to represent the views of many others on both sides of the Atlantic, Wintour is tough in her position. You have to be. You also have to be dedicated, hardworking, passionate about fashion, and self-disciplined. The story quoted the newspaper's own fashion editor, Hilary Alexander, as saying, "I'm sure that Anna is probably quite tough to work for. But she has to be. She probably does make life impossible for her assistants, sometimes because she has an iron will. It's the nature of this business. Fashion is full of workaholics for whom it is their whole lives, because they love it." With all the publicity, Anna had to say something, so she told the New York Times, "I'm looking forward to reading the book." Hamish Bowles, her European editor-at-large, said the book should be laughed off as very inventive fiction. Privately, Anna fumed. She was spitting fire, maintains a Vogue editor. Anna felt she had been used and abused by Weisberger. What the book did do, besides giving Weisberger her 15 minutes, was to place Anna squarely in the mainstream celebrity pantheon. Besides the gilded venues of New York, London, Paris, and Milan, Anna was now known and talked about over Big Macs and fries under the golden arches by young fashionistas in Walmart jeans. Laurie Jones, who claimed that she never read the book, says Weisberger wasn't here for very long. When Richard Story left, the editor who revealed to Patricia Bosworth that Anna didn't read anything in her magazine, she went with him. She wanted to be in features, and there aren't many positions that open up there, so she asked to go with Richard as his assistant. While she was here, she seemed to be a perfectly happy, lovely woman. When Jones had to fill the position vacated by a more recent assistant of Anna's who was promoted, she had to do a lot of interviewing. All those people had read the book, she says. One of them asked me, would she have to walk Anna's dog? I said no. I guess that's in the book. Anna doesn't share a lot of details about her personal life, acknowledges Jones. She is slightly enigmatic, doesn't pour out her heart to people. And there are questions, things people wonder about her, nuclear winter and all that. We go our separate ways, but we've always been able to talk about things. Now, this next chapter is entitled An Affair to Remember, and really, this is what the rest of the book is about. This is going to be an explosive story, and it's really going to change our perception, too, of Anna as far as her public behavior goes. Up to this point, she's been very, very closed off from the rest of the world in a negative sort of way. I mean, I think it made people wonder, like, why are you such an ice queen? Now we're going to see a side of her that is very flamboyant and also disgusting. So I just sort of feel annoyed with her overall. There doesn't seem like she ever hit a sweet spot where she could just be a normal person. Because with this affair partner of hers, once they decide to finally make it public, their behavior is so juvenile and strange. I am flabbergasted, but let's dive right in. Despite her enormous success and power professionally, Anna's personal life was in a dreadful state by the late 90s. Her seemingly happy marriage to her guru, David Schaefer, was on shaky grounds. Just as 1998 was an extraordinarily wonderful and joyous year for Anna, 1999 would turn out to be one of the ugliest periods in her otherwise glam life. A year filled with carnal scandal, tear-jerking heartbreak, and stranger-than-fiction irony. Though Anna and Schaefer tried to keep their private life very private, there were signs of growing discord and discontent. The two were seen together at public events less and less, and when they were, the psychiatrist looked glum while the editrix's wife switched on her brilliant, albeit enigmatic, smile for the photographers. The couple barely communicated. During a vacation in Tony St. Barth's in their 14th year of marriage, Anna and Schaefer sat together on the beach but never spoke a word, and were described by an observer as sad and bored-looking. A high-profile journalist who covered the fashion world recalls how Anna and Schaefer had angry dinners together in an Italian restaurant near their Greenwich Village home. They'd fight so bitterly at the table that often one or the other of them would just get up and walk out, and the other would sit there finishing their meal. They were the kind of public rows that one would think that a stylish, image-conscious person like Anna would not engage in. Other times she'd eat alone if they weren't talking. She'd walk into certain restaurants in her neighborhood and demand a certain table. If it wasn't ready, she'd blow her top. There was tremendous anger there. This source says that he never understood the marriage. David is certainly no Adonis, and he's such a mild-mannered guy, though he was her Svengali. It was amusing that he married Anna, and that he specialized in disturbed teenagers. Somehow that always rang true to me. Despite all of Schaefer's love and support over the years, Anna is said to have gotten bored with the marriage, just as she got bored with the length of skirts, or photographers who had served their purpose, or assistants who didn't act slavish, or designers who no longer turned on her fashion juices. She was numb, tired of the routine. Playing Scrabble was one of their pastimes. And she wanted more excitement in her life, says one close observer of the marriage. David was so different from all those men that she'd been involved with in the past. Not to sound mean or cynical, but I think David, who's really brilliant and very charming, had served Anna's purpose. He gave her 2 lovely children, was a great father, was her guiding light through the most important years of her career. But I think after all her success, Anna felt omnipotent, felt like she could handle it all on her own. She needed a new beginning. And then Shelby came along. At a glitzy New York City ballet gala at Lincoln Center in late 1997, Anna met a new man, and her life was about to be turned upside down. She was chatting at the table of the diamond-encrusted socialite and philanthropist, Ann Bass, when she was introduced to tall, sexy, rugged, extremely bright, and wealthy entrepreneur, John Shelby Bryan. Bryan, 3 years older than Anna, was the top man at the $500 million ICG Communications headquarters in Denver. He also was a major fundraiser for the Democratic Party and through political events at the posh East 71st Street townhouse that he shared with his second wife of some 17 years, Catherine Bryan, a psychologist and marriage counselor, and their 2 children. As a money-raising star in the Democratic Party, he was a friend of Bill's. When President Bill learned of Bryan's affair with Anna, he called Catherine Bryan, with whom he once flirted, from Air Force One to offer his condolences. Shelby was a Marlboro man to David's Pillsbury Doughboy, maintains a well-placed observer, to Anna's blossoming relationship. Anna, who was one of the world's great flirts, and Shelby, who was a skirt chaser extraordinaire, fell for each other the moment they locked eyes at that gala. She was like a schoolgirl, acting sexy with him, and he was smitten. It took a while for them to really get serious. They were both married, for God's sake. But their meeting that night sealed the fate of both those marriages. Until she met Bryan, Anna had been viewed as a caring and loving wife, which was quite a feat, especially during the period when she was alone in London running British Vogue, and later spending long hours changing HG and American Vogue into her image. Friends say that despite her ambition and drive and the demands of her career, Anna had always tried to be compassionate and sensitive to her husband and his needs, as he was to hers. There was a point about midway through their marriage when David was going through some major suffering from ulcers, says a pal who knew Anna from her days with John Bradshaw. Anna was just so concerned, and I don't think my wife would be as sensitive and caring to me as Anna was to David. I was there at their house in the village one day, and David had the ulcers, and there were tears in Anna's eyes. She was worried about getting the right doctors for him, and the fact that he couldn't eat this and he couldn't eat that. And she was hugging him and holding his arm and crying. I was truly moved because in all my years of marriage, I've never seen that from my wife. Anna and Schaefer were also concerned and loving parents, and would do anything in the world for their children, Charlie and Bea. They were active as much as they could be in their very fancy private schools. They attended parents' nights and orientations regarding the course curriculums for the year, and Schaefer at one point volunteered to be a safety patrol crossing guard at his son's school. But they rarely mingled with the other parents. Anna always sat by herself at all the school functions, says a parent. When she and David came together before they broke up, they sat next to each other and apart from everybody else. They were cold and aloof, and they felt that they were above everyone else. However, they made at least one half-hearted attempt to be friendly when they invited a group of parents for cocktails and hors d'oeuvres. They'd even hired transportation and bought tickets to treat them all to a Neil Simon play. It was a gracious gesture, and an apparent attempt by Anna to be more of a down-to-earth mother. But it turned into a strange scene because the Schaefers at the last minute never joined the others at the theater. Recalls one parent, "We'd been rushed in and out of the house, and after they didn't come with us to the theater, everyone was like, 'What's with them?' That sort of sealed their fate with the parents in the class from then on." Not long after Anna met Brian, he began sending her flowers and little gifts. Once things started heating up, Anna would close the door to her office at Vogue to chat with him on the phone, and she soon began taking long lunches, seeing him secretly. Anna knew the game well. She'd played it when she was with John Bradshaw. Unlike the Eurotypes Anna had been involved with over the years, Brian was an all-American, his roots buried deep in the oil-rich Texas soil. Brian was something of a jock. At high school in Lamar, Texas, he was a football player. He also was a pompous ass at 14, recalls a co-ed who became a prominent Houstonian. Shelby was cocky, self-assured, and very good-looking. He was involved with the most beautiful cheerleader. He was big man on campus, handsome and muscular, the same as he looks now, but minus 30 or 40 pounds. He was very popular, and everyone adored him, for the same reason why people like him today. He's a guy's guy, a man's man. He's just very macho. She could have been talking about Bradshaw. At the University of Texas, where he studied history and art, Brian played some football and at one point was a Golden Gloves boxer. He went on to get a degree in law. A pal, Fred Barron, now a powerful Dallas attorney, called him the Great Gatsby. You could tell he was going to be successful. In the early 70s, when Anna was just starting out in the fashion magazine world in London, Brian worked for Ralph Nader in Washington, D.C., then went to Harvard Business School, and for a time was at Morgan Stanley. From there, he eventually got in on the ground floor of the cellular phone business, and he made a bundle. Along with being a macho jock with a good business head on his broad shoulders, Brian was a mama's boy, says another Houstonian. And that must have something to do with why he fell for Anna, and she for him. For the two, Mama and Anna, were remarkably alike. Brian's mother, beautiful Gretchen Smith Brian Chandler Josie, who died of cancer in the early 1990s, was a fashionista par excellence who draped herself in Chanel or mixed and matched it with Yves Saint Laurent. She was a culture maven, involved in the Houston Opera and charity work, and was driven and ambitious. She was a style setter. If Shelby was looking for a woman, like his mother, he couldn't have chosen anyone more like her than Anna Wintour in terms of style, glamour, and fashion. Whatever Gretchen wanted to achieve, she would just go forth and achieve. Anna appeared to be a virtual clone of her new lover's mother. Shelby Brian tended to pursue interesting, chic women. Anna wasn't his first. At 22, just out of law school, Brian married Lucia Ann Rawson, a pretty Houston society woman 2 years older than him, whom he had started seeing in college. Like Brian's mother, his mother-in-law Natasha Rawson, said to have been a Russian ballerina in her day, was a fashionista. I always confused Natasha with Gretchen, notes a Houston socialized friend. Natasha was divine, glamorous, a natural and great beauty. Lucia looked nothing like her mother. Lucia's a nice, cute, lovely, charming gal, quiet and low-key. But her mother looked just like Shelby's mother, breathtaking, with fine bone structure and clear, translucent porcelain skin. I could see her and I would think, why are you in Houston? You belong in Paris. Shelby and Lucia Ann Brian had 2 children, Ashley, who was born in Boston in 1973, and Alexis, born in New York in 1976. 4 years after the second child, the marriage fell apart, and the couple separated on November 1st, 1980. Brian filed for divorce on the grounds that his marriage had become insupportable because of discord or conflict of personalities. The divorce was final on August 6, 1981, a few weeks before what would have been the bride's 13th wedding anniversary, and she got a nice settlement that continues to the end of 2024. On March 12, 1982, he married his girlfriend, Catherine Gurley, a brunette Kansas beauty with a young son, but not before she signed a prenuptial agreement. Some 6 months after the Bryans' wedding, their first son, John Austin Bryan, was born. A second son, James Alexander, was born in 1985. Anna and Brian tried to keep their affair a secret, but they were reportedly spotted early one morning leaving an elegant Manhattan apartment building, Anna draped in a chinchilla coat meant for evening wear. The sighting reached the media, and in 1999 the scandal broke. At home, David Schaefer learned of the affair when he found a message Brian had left for Anna on their answering machine. What kind of idiot does that? He wanted to be found out. The psychiatrist called Catherine Bryan, the psychologist. "Your husband and my wife," he is said to have told her, "are effing each other." The gossip press was all over the story like Chanel on Anna. The outrageous internet fashion industry website Chic Happens, overseen by Ben Whitcomb and Horatio Silva, two 30-something Australians working in New York, was the first to break the story based on an anonymous email. Chic Happens was designed for fashionistas and people within the industry who wanted to drop a dime on their colleagues and bosses. Where else could one find items such as, which aging glossy editrix dyes her pubic hair to cover the gray? Because Anna sat at the summit, she was a particular target of Chic Happens, and the website ran bitchy items about her. But the story about Anna's adulterous affair was the biggest. Whitcomb, who later became a gossip columnist at the New York Daily News, and Silva, an editor at the New York Times, never revealed their deep throat, but noted that most fashion magazines treat their staff like dirt. If you screw someone, they get on the phone. They want revenge. The pair believed that Anna had subsequently attempted to censor their appearance on cable TV. They were told by station executives that they could not mention her name or any of the Condé Nast magazines on camera. Page 6, a must-read gossip column in Rupert Murdoch's tabloid New York Post, was running neck and neck with Chic Happens, and ran a blind item in February 1999 asking, "Which fashion oracle, who appears to have an ideal home with a loving husband and kids, has been having a year-long affair with a telecommunications titan, who also happens to have a wonderful marriage?" By mid-June, the Intelligencer gossip column of New York Magazine, Anna's alma mater, reported under the headline, "Wintour of Discontent?" Then after a series of teasing half-blind items in the tabs, Anna's love life is fast becoming a public drama. The item didn't mention her lover by name, but described him as a millionaire Democratic fundraiser, and said that they'd been involved for more than 7 months in a none-too-secret dalliance that had raised eyebrows all over town. As for comment, David Schaefer stated, "I have no plans to get divorced, and I hope that Anna has no plans to get divorced." In London, Anna's father's former newspaper, the Evening Standard, quoted an anonymous close family friend as saying, "I think for the first time in her life she's madly in love with someone and she finds the whole experience totally overwhelming." When Texas Monthly did a small profile on Brian in the wake of the breaking scandal, he confirmed that he and his wife had separated. But regarding Anna, he stated, "There's an old-fashioned view that your personal life should be kept private, and that's my view." In her syndicated column in Newsday, Liz Smith called Brian the romantic fly in the sticky ointment of Anna Wintour's marriage. And let me add this. I've heard only the most unsettling things about Mr. Brian, all about how fascinating, naughty, thrilling, exciting, and bad boyish he is said to be. Conversation about this tycoon makes him a cross between a movie star and Lord Byron, and I am told by everyone observing that the delectable Wintour is over the moon in love with him, more excited and happier than she has ever been in her formidable and controlled life. It isn't just his money either, although, of course, money is always in vogue. Well, Anna refused to talk to the press about the scandal. Her and Schaefer's high-powered New York lawyer and spokesman, Ed Hayes, put up a smokescreen. "I promise you that I'm not doing a divorce. They're together, they love their children, and they're going to stay together," he said. Every September, the world's fashion press descends on New York for the annual rag trade bacchanal called Fashion Week, when the beautiful models strut their stuff, when fortunes and reputations of designers and manufacturers are won or lost, depending usually on how Anna reacts to what she sees, and what Vogue subsequently features in its glossy pages. But all the attention for the 1999 Fashion Week was on Anna herself, seated, as usual, front row center. Her marital scandal was on everyone's glossy lips. As the fashion reporter of London's Daily Telegraph pointed out, the fashionistas loved it. After all, this is an industry that thrives on celebrity gossip at the best of times, and when the target is one of its own, indeed the widely feared queen of them all, you can virtually hear the shears being sharpened. That week, the September 20 issue of the New York Magazine, with every fashion person in the world in town, chose to make Anna its cover girl. The story was headlined "The Summer of Her Discontent," and it went into gossipy detail about Anna's extramarital relationship. The article called Brian a flashy extrovert with a notoriously roving eye. On the outside, Anna was very British, stiff upper lip. But on the inside, according to a close source, she was embarrassed and devastated. For someone like Anna, who is so private and secretive, to have her dirty laundry strutted down the runway for the world to see, to have the biggest skeleton in her closet on display, it was the worst. She rallied against the press, against her competitors at other magazines who were gloating. Anna's never been much for introspection, but she suddenly was doing a whole lot of soul-searching. She felt guilty. She felt sick. She didn't know which way to turn. And indeed, there was great gloating in the bitchy, wicked world of fashion. Despite her disgust at all the horrendous gossip, the media-savvy, tight-lipped, ultra-private Anna actually cooperated somewhat with New York Magazine as it was preparing its story and gathering photos. Surely she must have realized that the world was rubbing its hands together and was going to do a number on her. But she agreed to be interviewed to a point. The article quoted her as saying just 42 words regarding the scandal. Over lunch at her favorite table at the Four Seasons with the writer, she said, "There are certain things that no one wants to read about in the tabloid press." She added, "You know that your friend and your family have one vision, and if the outside world has another, then that's just something that you don't focus on." She also acknowledged that there was nothing in any of the reports that she wanted to correct. However, Anna's involvement with the photographs that ran with the article was an entirely different story. While she agreed to the brief interview, she refused at first to pose for an exclusive photo and instead sent over to cover editor Jordan Shops, her longtime friend at the magazine, a box containing pictures she was authorizing the magazine to use. One was in black and white, taken by Vogue fashion photographer Mario Testino, says Shops, and it had Anna with bangs down to her eyebrows, big sunglasses, and a fur coat, pulled up so you could barely see her. It could have been Audrey Hepburn or Greta Garbo. She looked to be concealed, hiding, and very removed. Shops went to the editor overseeing the story, told him he didn't like the photo, and asked to be told when the interviewing was finished. He said he had a plan. When he got word that the editorial side had finished, he called Anna. I told her, "Look, we all know the story is not going to be a puff piece. It's going to be tough. Why should you not look terrific? Look courageous. Look open on the cover. If the readers see a great photo, they'll think it's a great story no matter what. We'll go into a studio and not come out until we're all satisfied." It was a weekend. Anna said she was taking her children to see a tennis match, but she'd think about it. A few days later, she called Shops and agreed to pose, but not with the photographer he had suggested, whom she did not know. She wanted the famed fashion and celebrity shooter, Herb Ritz. Shops agreed, and the shoot was scheduled for the next day at Chelsea Piers, a commercial and entertaining complex on the Hudson River. Anna arrived in a tank top over a short skirt, and with her was Andre Leon Talley, who was there as her stylist, fussing and mussing and making sure everything was fine, Shops says. In the end, New York got an exclusive cover photo of Anna. It showed her unsmiling, looking determined, her bob streaked with blonde, wearing a tight white wife beater, her skinny but toned arms defiantly crossed. It was a hot shot, but she wasn't thrilled with the story. I heard it had a very devastating effect on her, Shops says. At Vogue, managing editor Laurie Jones contended that Anna allowed them to profile her, which was not actually the case. The magazine was going to do the story whether or not she cooperated, but Anna's hope was that by offering some cooperation, they might go easy on her. Jones says she was not surprised that Anna agreed to participate to the extent that she did, and notes that she herself was offended by the article. I told Anna I wanted to write a letter to the editor, which I did to complain, but she never would have asked me. She never feels she's being picked on unfairly and never complains. She would never say anything, and there have been things in print which are totally inaccurate and unfair, but she wouldn't complain. She just thinks those are the things she has to deal with, and she deals with them by herself. She's a very strong woman. As for Anna's affair, Jones says, I was very surprised. It was something nobody really expected, but she seems very happy. Oh, Laurie, get your nose out of her butt. I mean, Laurie Jones seems like a person who would be unable to say the sky is blue if Anna was standing there, steely-eyed, telling her it was green. I mean, I'm annoyed because, look, okay, she seems happy. What kind of commentary is that? But did her happiness come at the expense of both her husband and her affair partner's wife? What about all the children involved? She's got 2 of her own, plus her own stepchildren. He's got 4 of his own, plus stepchildren. What about all the people involved? But, well, she seems happy, so I guess all's well that ends well, right? I don't know, Laurie. I don't know. But you know what? It really is okay to make some proper commentary on a thing if you're asked. You don't need to say, well, she seems happy. Don't even bother to say anything if that's going to be your commentary on it. All right, this last and final chapter is entitled A New Life. November 1999, the cusp of the new millennium, was the cruelest month for Anna. Even in the best of times, and these were the worst, she wasn't looking forward to it. For November marked a major milestone in her life. the big 50. Turning 50, a difficult rite of passage for most, was even tougher for Anna, whose whole being in philosophy, both for herself and for Vogue, was based on looking young. Model young, movie star young, beautiful young, mini skirt and manalas sexy young. But now she faced 50, embroiled in a horrid, very public extramarital affair and a hellish divorce. Moreover, she was concerned whether her relationship had legs, because in recent months, her lover had been on and off her radar. Shelby was cooling his heels, says an insider. Catherine had caught Shelby before. He'd apologized and said he'd never do it again if she took him back. Now he got caught again, this time with Anna, and he was profusely apologizing. At that point, I don't think he wanted to divorce his wife for Anna. Another knowledgeable source believes Shelby was not the epitome of a monogamous guy, and Catherine knew that. He had a reputation as a ladies' man. Catherine knew very clearly on that Shelby had hooked up with Anna, but I don't think Catherine ever thought it would come to much. I think it's really ironic that Catherine is a marriage counselor, and she married somebody who is so well known as a philanderer. Maybe she thought she could be the one to fix him. Anyway, for a time, there was speculation that Anna and Brian had ended it, and that Anna was trying for reconciliation with an angry David Schaefer. A woman writer friend of John Bradshaw's, who also knew Anna, was shocked when she first saw Brian and noticed his resemblance to Bradshaw, and how similar they acted around women. I met Shelby one time at my literary agent's house, and he was already with Anna, and flirted with me. I couldn't believe it. On Wednesday, November 3rd, Anna celebrated her 50th birthday. The very next day, she got an urgent call from her brother Patrick in London. Anna's father, the most important influence in her life, whose icy manner and editorial style she inherited and emulated, had died in his home. At his side was his second wife, Audrey. Wintour was 82 years old, and the cause of death was cerebroarteriosclerosis, or a hardening of the arteries in his brain. Along with all the turbulence in his life, Anna was now struck with great sadness over her father's passing. She was devastated, in a state of shock, says a longtime family friend. First of all, there was all of the horrible chatter over her affair, and then came her father's death. It was too much, even for Anna, and she's like the Rock of Gibraltar. Charles really was the most influential man in Anna's life. He was her teacher, her guide, her advisor. She was like him in many ways. Tough, stern, icy, creative. It's a cliche, but she really was a daddy's girl. Now both of her parents were gone. Noni had died 3 years earlier on January 5th, 1996, 8 days before her 79th birthday. The passing of the divorced, lonely, and retired social worker came as she was being treated for pneumonia and a leukemia blood cell disorder in London's prestigious Royal Brompton and National Heart Hospital. Friends from when she was married, such as the film critic Alex Walker, weren't even informed of her death. According to an American cousin, Anna telephoned to tell her of her mother's death, one of the few contacts. In London, a small memorial service was held. Prior to Noni Wintour's hospitalization, she'd been living in a flat in Chelsea where Patrick Wintour and his wife, Madeline Bunting Wintour, also a Guardian journalist, lived, and they watched over her. The couple later divorced. On word of her father's death, Anna dropped everything and flew to London to deal with funeral arrangements. He was cremated, and a memorial service. The Guardian said in its obituary, if the test of a good editor is the ability to stamp a new sense of style and purpose on a newspaper, then Charles Wintour was one of the greatest editors of the second half of the century. He was one of the acknowledged masters of his trade, a courtly man with a sharp pen and a sharper private tongue. Those who worked for him did not always love him, but he commanded universal respect for his shrewdness and speedy decisiveness. He was, with military precision, the general in every battle. When Anna's sadness diminished, anger erupted when she discovered a shocking clause in her father's will. The document was dated August 23, 1993, when Anna and David Schaefer, always considered a saint by Charles Wintour, were still together. The clause stated, I do not, and that is in all caps, leave a share of my residuary estate to my daughter Anna Wintour Schaefer, as she is well provided for, but I wish her to know that I am very proud of her great success and achievement, and I am equally pleased that she has combined her career so happily with her family life. Anna's happy family life was now a thing of the past. And to Anna's chagrin, her father's estate, valued at upward of $1 million in stocks, shares, and personal and real property, was left to his widow, whom Anna much resented, the widow's 2 children from a previous marriage, and Anna's 3 siblings. Anna wasn't as much upset about not being an heir as she was that her stepmother and her father's stepchildren were beneficiaries. With a memorial service for her father scheduled for December, Anna returned to New York, where she was met with yet another emotional blow. On November 20th, Alex Lieberman, who first spotted Anna's talents and was the dominant creative and political force in guiding her career through Condé Nast to the summit at Vogue, died at his retirement home in Miami. He was 87. For Anna, who owed her career to Lieberman, his death was just 2 weeks after her father's, and it came as a jolting shock. In Anna's rarefied world, November appeared to be a cursed month. 13 years earlier, almost to the day of Lieberman's death, John Bradshaw had suddenly died. And it would have been the 59th birthday of her brother Gerald, whose death in that car bike accident in 1951 left the Wintours in emotional shambles. On December 6, about a week before her father's memorial service, Anna made an appearance on one of her treasured events, the Costume Institute's gala that she co-chaired at New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art. The place was packed with bold-faced names. But there in the center ring was the spectacle of Anna, with all of the scandal buzz focused on her, crying in public with mascara running down her cheeks, her tear-filled, swollen eyes covered with her sunglasses. Some thought she was upset because Shelby Bryan had to leave the party early on the night that was planned to be their most public appearance since they decided to divorce their spouses. One of the celebrities present, Whitney Houston, who had her own marital problems with her husband Bobby Brown, was quoted as saying that Anna was so furious that she would F that boyfriend up. In fact, it was the death of her father and Alex Lieberman, along with the roller coaster ride of her affair, that had caused Anna to fall apart that glittery evening. Anna felt as if a dark cloud had descended over her and would not clear away, says a friend who saw her in London when she returned for her father's memorial service. Hundreds of VIPs, celebrities, and journalists turned out for the celebration of Wintour's life, held in the Villa Floral Hall of London's Royal Opera House on December 13th. David Schaefer was not listed among them, but Shelby Bryan was. Anna spoke lovingly about her father and also talked compassionately for the first time in anyone's memory about how his second wife had made the last 2 decades of his life pleasant. There seemed to have been some sort of rapprochement, at least publicly. Anna's speech was believed to have been written by her brother Patrick. The journalist Paul Callan, who had started out in newspapers working for Charles Wintour, was suddenly struck by how closely she reminded me of her father in voice and manner. When I closed my eyes, I thought it was Charles speaking. After the service, Anna posed with family members for a photograph. She was the only one smiling for the camera, as if she were on the red carpet or at an awards dinner. Susan Summers, who had worked for Charles Wintour at the Evening Standard, went up to Anna, who was wrapped in mink, to offer her condolences and say a few nice words about her father. I reached out, and she recoiled. Actually recoiled. I don't know if she was expecting me to throw paint on her mink or what, but it was an actual physical recoil. She's sort of like the queen. You're not supposed to talk to her. In the new millennium, Anna and her husband were divorced in New York, the papers sealed by the court. But, as a friend of the couple asserts, Anna was very generous with David. Anna's brother Jim, however, told Vivian Lasky Anna got to keep 2 houses. In New York, Catherine Bryan filed for divorce in Manhattan Supreme Court on March 10, 2000, charging adultery and cruel and unusual treatment. 5 days later, Bryan sued her in Houston, 3 days after what would have been their 18th wedding anniversary. He felt it would be more financially beneficial for him to get divorced in the Lone Star State, although he owned 3 homes in New York, because that's where their prenuptial agreement was written and signed and was covered by the Texas community property law. Moreover, Texas had no-fault divorce, which meant details of his affair with Anna wouldn't be made public. At the time Bryan met Anna, he was said to be worth $30 million, but in August 2000, he resigned from his lucrative position as chairman and chief executive officer of ICG Communications, operator of a nationwide voice and data network. Between the spring of 2000 and the day of his resignation, the company's stock, of which Bryan owned 2.3 million shares, had dived from $39 a share to $6.47, a loss, at least on paper, of $75 million. The New York Daily News observed, "It looks like some kind of karma just caught up with Bryan." Given the new circumstances, it will be interesting to see how long Bryan remains in vogue with Wintour. That summer, despite the financial mess, Anna reportedly vacationed with Bryan in the south of France with her 2 children and his 2 sons. Then, in November of 2000, high-flying ICG Communications filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Press reports said that the company was riddled with debt. Nevertheless, Bryan was still well off, and he and Catherine Bryan reached a settlement and were divorced. Their townhouse reportedly sold for $11 million, and the former Mrs. Bryan moved to Park Avenue. Just as Audrey Slaughter had made Charles Wintour a happier and less icy man when she hooked up with him, Anna appeared more relaxed and less frosty with Bryan than she had with David Schaefer. She lightened and highlighted her signature bob and in public wore her sunglasses less. And there was talk that she even looked younger. A nip and a tuck here and there wasn't out of the question. At a New Yorkers for Children fall gala, Anna boogied with Brian to the Village People's disco gay anthem, YMCA, and the boyish Brian grabbed Gwyneth Paltrow and Oscar de la Renta, and he and Anna danced with them. Anna's divorce appeared to have little emotional impact on her children. As a family observer notes, Bea and Charlie live in a world of friends whose parents have affairs, whose names wind up in the gossip columns, who get divorced. They just felt it was a way of life. Anna had always had a close bond with her daughter. The child attended her first fashion show in her terrible twos with her mother. And some were later convinced that Bea Schaefer, as one fashion wag observes, is Anna squared without the shades and the bob. By age 10, the two didn't see eye to eye regarding fashion. "She doesn't listen to anything I say," complained Anna. "She likes overalls and sweatpants, and she doesn't like dresses. As long as she's happy, that's fine, but occasionally I would love to see her in a dress." The child often confronted Anna when she was dressing to go out for the evening, critiquing that what she was wearing was too revealing. Declared Anna, "She'd like me to go like a monk." All that changed when the youngster entered her teen years and became what one fashion journalist described as a beautiful young fashion plate in her own right. At one event, she wore a flattering, dreamy, frothy, pale, strapless, full-skirted tulle gown. In the spring of 2003, when, at Anna's prodding, Condé Nast saw fit to jump into the Pop-Tart arena with a fashion and style magazine aimed at young girls called Teen Vogue, 16-year-old Bea Schaefer was named as a contributing editor. Nepotism, like wearing fur, had never been a problem for Anna. Anna felt that girls who could barely see over the edge of a catwalk were budding fashionistas. They are so much more aware of what is going on in fashion than girls used to be, and that's the magazine's reason for being. Anna's daughter became involved in the first issue, said the magazine's editor, Amy Astley, a protege of Anna's. "I really love what Bea has to say. She's obviously the ideal Teen Vogue reader. She and her friends are a ready-made focus group. They're smart and really sophisticated and clearly know a lot about fashion, but they're still normal girls." Every so often, Anna and her sleek, shiny-haired, and buxom daughter, who has been described as the Vogue's editrix mini-me, sit together on the front row in the shows and occasionally attend cocktail parties together. A Wintour family friend, the publicist Paul Wilmot, said Anna's daughter, considered poised, elegant, and regal, has the DNA, and by osmosis, she's got the exposure and experience. Don't be surprised if she winds up a young editor somewhere. Or America's Next Top Model. By mid-2004, there was talk that several agencies had interest in representing Bea, but she had her sights on going to college, something her mother hadn't done. With her divorce out of the way, Anna was on top of the world. As always, Vogue was number one, and Anna was in total control. And she now had Brian all to herself. And then she got word that her longtime nemesis, Tina Brown, now running gossipy Talk magazine, was about to strike, having assigned a grudge profile of Brian. Brown had left enemies behind when she jumped ship at Condé Nast Start Talk. Anna was at the top of the list. Tina had a very visceral hatred for Anna, discloses a close observer of the two women. It was not predicated on anything logical or anything that Anna did to her, but was predicated once again on the innate rivalry that would arise between those two very driven and tough British editors. Brown focused on Brian in particular, the insider asserts, because Brown's husband, the editor Harry Evans, allegedly had affairs. Tina was very bitter about that and was asking friends why nobody was concentrating on other editors who had bad marriages. There had always been stuff about Harry, blind items in the tabloids about him, so Tina was very bitter, not only about the negative press, but about her husband's womanizing. So suddenly there's Anna messing around with Shelby, and Tina couldn't wait to do a story and talk. From what I gather, it was a grudge piece. Another element in Brown's decision to go after Anna by publishing a piece about Brian was the fact that an unauthorized biography about her marriage was in the works by Vanity Fair writer Judith Bachrach. Brown expected that the book about her life with Evans would be a hatchet job. Even though Brian made for a legitimate news story, Anna was beside herself when she got wind of the Talk piece and made a slew of telephone calls to Brown pleading with her not to run the story, says a publishing insider. Brown told her not to worry, but that she planned to continue pursuing the story. Anna contacted every power player that she knew in media to try to get the piece killed. From what I hear, she pleaded with Graydon Carter, the editor of Vanity Fair, and went to Cy Newhouse to see if he could help. The Guardian in London, where Patrick Wintour was a reporter, jumped on the war between the two British magazine queens and noted that Brown has heartily ignored Anna's pleas not to run a piece about Anna's arm candy. The enmity between them runs deep. The unflattering piece was headlined, "The Talented Mr. Brian," and went on from there. There was a full-page photo of the one-time Golden Gloves boxer, hands on the hips of his pinstripe two-button business suit, looking ready to take on all comers. The photo on the contents page showed a sunglassed Anna with a slinky off-the-shoulder dress next to a tuxedoed Brian. The first line of the story, which was supposed to be about Brian's business practices, began, Last June, having just returned from a vacation in the south of France with his girlfriend, Vogue editor-in-chief Anna Wintour, the article touched on the affair and also quoted a number of women who had made claims about Brian's louche behavior. In her book, Bachrock notes wryly that Tina was good enough to send Wintour a copy of the published article with a "with compliments" card attached. Indeed, Brown had done what appeared to the media to be another number on Anna, and she was surely out for revenge. Neither Brian nor Anna took any legal action against Brown's magazine for the article, but Brian successfully pursued a libel claim against the London Daily Telegraph, who had picked up material from the talk piece under a headline, "English Queens of New York in Clash Over Wintour's Boyfriend." 5 months after its piece ran, the Telegraph apologized to Brian and admitted that certain facts in the story were erroneous. The newspaper apologized to him in a published story and agreed to make a generous donation to a charity of Brian's choice and to pay his legal fees. The fashion website Chic Happens, which broke the story of the affair, pointed out that Britain's more lenient libel laws made a judgment in Brian's favor, more likely, and noted that a victory in the UK, the home turf of both Wintour and Brown, would be that much sweeter. The writers added, "If you're reading this, Shelby, we don't have any money." With Brian on her arm, Anna began to have another love affair with the glitterati of Houston, her lover's hometown, where the glamorous twosome began making stopovers, and where Anna was treated like visiting royalty. Anna and Brian also sparked whispers and gossip up with their openly amorous ways. At a party for his brother at the exclusive Bayou Club, which includes high-powered members such as George W. Bush, Brian and Anna acted like a pair of going city adolescents at a spin-the-bottle party. In front of the world, Shelby and Anna spent a good part of this party making out, tongues down each other's throats, seated on a little bench in a little foyer to the party room, asserts a well-placed observer of the Houston social scene. Anna became friends with a number of the city's wealthiest and most powerful fashionistas, women who read Vogue as closely as they do a prenuptial agreement, fashion horses who spent at least tens of thousands of dollars a year to fill their closets with designer duds. One with whom Anna eventually bonded was Becca Cason Thrash, a gorgeous 50-something wife of one of the city's gazillionaires, who had to expand her closet by more than 1,000 square feet to fit all her elegant designer clothes. Name it, she had it. In Houston and in New York and Paris, this daughter of a Harlingen, Texas TV newscaster who married Wright was a bold-faced name, written about in the Houston Chronicle, Women's Wear Daily, Town and Country, Tina Brown's Talk before it became defunct, and Harper's Bazaar, in which the fashion diva was profiled as one of the couture big spenders. The magazine had followed Thrash and 2 others through fittings in Paris. Thrash had once been dubbed the High Priestess of Posh and had earned the nickname Tribeca because she usually changed her sexy, gorgeous outfits 3 times at the extravagant party she threw in her 20,000 square foot mansion. Indoor pool, 2,000 square foot kitchen, glass-floored second level. The place was once described as looking like a cutting-edge art museum. Anna just loves Texas. She loves it, declares the exuberant Thrash, who had invited Anna to be the guest of honor at a party at her home for the Houston Stage's Repertory Theater, an evening that included an abbreviated performance of Full Gallop, a one-woman show about the life of Vogue's one-time vaunted editor, Diana Freeland. We, on the theater board, were thinking about various ways to really make the evening interesting, and we came up with the idea of inviting Anna, Thrash says. She notes, though, there's no comparison between Anna and Diana Freeland other than the fact that they both held the same job. Anna absolutely does not compare herself to Mrs. Freeland. The arrangements for Anna's royal visit were made by another Houston fashion powerhouse, Susan Kreiner, who was a close friend of Brian and of his mother. Until the glittery night of the big party, Thrash says she felt intimidated by Anna. I'm not usually easily intimidated, but there are no words to use to describe to what lengths Anna herself, her persona, intimidated me. When I would see her at couture at the fashion collection, I'd be intimidated. She'd come in with those signature sunglasses on and take the best seat in the front row, and I'd think, God, she's a very imposing, intimidating character. You know who she is. The world knows who she is. Everyone knows that's Anna Wintour, the most influential woman in fashion globally. It all was too much for Thrash to comprehend, so Anna became a scary figure to her. Everyone who was anyone in Texan in the fashion world seemed presented at Thrash's party. Politicians, celebrities, designers. Thrash had custom lighting installed to give the walls a red tint, and models were hired to move among the guests in dresses by the designers who were there. Mark Bagley, James Mishka, Diane von Furstenberg, among others. One woman is overheard complaining about her jewelry elbow. Apparently all the bracelets and rocks she was sporting were too heavy. Anna, wearing a silvery Chanel suit minus sunglasses, arrived fashionably late, holding hands with Brian. All eyes were on her. The local press had reported little, if anything, about their extramarital relationship. Gossip like that just doesn't see print in Houston. Lawyers threatened suit before items run, but everyone in Thrash's wide circle knew all the dirt about Anna and dished about it incessantly. One of the guests noted that without her glasses, Anna's eyes blinked rapidly, and that she did a double take looking at the bountiful new breasts of a Texas Rose in a low-cut Ralph Lauren gown, who introduced herself, practically bowing to the editrix from New York. That night, the once intimidated Thrash bonded with her imperiousness when they reached the table of honor. It was just the 8 of us, Anna and Brian, the Thrashes, the Kreiners, and Brian's brother and sister-in-law, and we spent 3 or 4 hours at the same table and interacted, and I just thought Anna was great, and I was no longer intimidated, emphasizes Thrash. Anna was delightful, and she's completely 100% misunderstood. It's just that she's a slow warm-up, really. I do think she is very British, very reserved, and for a Texan that can be misunderstood. At my parties, I never see people next to each other who are sleeping together, so I put Anna between my husband and JP, Shelby's brother. So my husband was her dinner partner, and he adored her, thought she was fabulous and very sexy. Not in a blatant way, but in a subtle way. At a certain point during the evening, Thrash's besotted mate got up to talk to another party guest, and Brian, who was so very effervescent and fun, dashed over and sat in his chair as fast as he could, and Anna and Shelby leaned over and kissed, recalls Thrash fondly. They're like a young couple in love, and when all the speeches and presentations were done, Anna and Brian were the first ones on the dance floor. My girlfriend was dancing next to them, and she told me, God, they were kissing, and he was all over her. It was just like at prom. The following Monday, once again all business, Anna, who never had a real prom, was at her huge desk in her enormous corner office with a wall of glass that gave her a spectacular view of Times Square from the new Condé Nast Tower. She was on top of the world, professionally and personally, ready to start work on another lush, beautiful, catalog-thick, very lucrative style-setting sexy celebrity on the cover issue of Vogue. And as always, she was prepared to do battle with her competition, and as usual, came out the victor. By the middle of the first decade of the new millennium, her relationship with Brian was still golden. The two were seen together at fashion shows, cocktail parties, and cultural events in New York, holding hands. But when the photographers moved in to take pictures, Brian usually evaporated into the background, leaving Anna in the spotlight. Their affair was no longer considered hot news, and had long been out of the gossip columns. At Vogue, Anna had the best people working for her, the prize photographers, among them the incomparable Helmut Newton, whose erotically charged, compelling, and glamorous fashion shots had long been an asset of the magazine. He was thought of as a creator of porno chic. At 83, Newton was still under contract and had been faxing ideas to Anna in 2003 from his home in Monte Carlo for a layout he planned to do for her in Los Angeles. The two had a close working relationship dating back to the late 70s when Anna was fashion editor at Viva. Over the years, we had our moments. Anna and I had many moments, says Newton, recalling how tough and demanding and stubborn Anna can be. But she always knew what she was doing. She knew when to listen. It wasn't just charm that got her where she is today. We were at odds many, many times about her choice of my pictures. She could be very tough, but I've always respected Anna. Vogue's her magazine, and she knows so much about the job. Mostly, she does me very proud. No one can top her. She'll be in charge of deciding what's in and out of fashion long after I'm gone. Not long after Newton, who earned the nickname King of Kink because of his sexy portraits, arrived in the City of Angels, and tragedy struck. As he was driving out of the garage of the Chateau Marmont Hotel on Sunset Boulevard on January 23, 2004, he suffered an apparent heart attack, lost control, and crashed into a wall. He died in the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. His wife and muse, June, also a photographer, shot pictures of her fatally injured husband of many years. On June 2nd, his ashes were laid to rest in Berlin, his birthplace. In July, Anna was among the world's most famous fashionistas who paid homage to the great man at a memorial service held in Paris. Wearing a black and white Carolina Herrera dress, Anna spoke eloquently of her years working with Newton. Plenty of shocking things happen at Vogue, but there has never been anyone so consistently scandalous as Helmut, she confided. She called him a visionary photographer who possessed the magic touch to turn the most boring shoot into an erotic happening. The photos he turned into her, she said, had left her over the years aghast, awestruck, and always amazed. Then she surprised the gathering that included Tom Ford, Marc Jacobs, Jean-Paul Gaultier, Stella McCartney, and Anna's daughter Bea, who wore one of her mother's black Prada dresses and served as an usher at the service, by disclosing her one regret in an otherwise glamorous and very successful life. She revealed that as a young fashion editor at Harper's and Queen, Helmut Newton had offered to photograph her, but the shoot had never come off. Declared Anna, I would have loved to have been one of Helmut's women. I can't think of a greater compliment than to have been deemed worthy of Helmut's lens. The sadness of the event for Anna, though, gave way to a feeling of elation because of wonderful news from America. Sign Newhouse informed her that the September 2004 issue would be the largest Vogue ever and the biggest monthly magazine in publishing history, a whopping 832 pages. It was clear that as Anna Wintour headed toward a quarter century as editor-in-chief, she had truly turned Vogue into the most important and successful fashion arbiter and glamour page-turner in the world. That's the end, my friends. I can't say it's one of my favorite books we've read, probably because I thought the gossip might be a little hotter than it turned out to be. But we're done. I still fail to understand how she came to be who she was. I feel like she had the ability to get people in power to like her, and then that popularity with important people led people to believe that she was more than she was. I still struggle to understand how an editor-in-chief cannot be a writer as well. That is confusing to me. But I suppose if the magazine is based mostly on the visuals and isn't necessarily doing journalistic stories or pieces that really dig into interesting topics, I guess you really don't have to be much of a writer. So maybe it really all does make sense and I'm making it more complicated than it needs to be. Anyway, thank you all for sticking with me on this journey. As you know, I've stated a couple of times that we won't be doing books in this format anymore, but look in the future for other books that I will present to you in other ways. I'm still working on the Kardashian biography. I just haven't had much time to spend with it. But I'll be reviewing that book and telling you all the interesting parts from it. I won't be doing like a page by page. And I think that for some books like that, it'll be better to review that way. But then there's the books like the one about Prince Andrew that I plan on reading to you chapter by chapter. So I think we're just going to obviously add books in, but in new and different ways, or just fewer of them like in this style. But we've talked about it many times, you know. All right. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for tuning into this book, and I will see you tomorrow for the Friday News Roundup. Bye.